Welcome to another session of Microsoft Excel. Now, the series of videos that you will be learning from is all about how to copy and paste. Now, copy and paste is a very simple thing that we have used in Microsoft Office applications. But when it comes to Microsoft Excel, it's a bit different because you have a lot of different categories of copy and pasting. So the first category that we will be learning today is about transpose paste. So let's start today's session. Now, what is the meaning of transpose, right? Now think about it in this example. Let's say you have a data and you have your data arranged in columns and in rows. But you want to rearrange it and change the rows into columns and the columns into rows. How do you go about it? Well, here you will be using something called the transpose feature, which helps in rotating the data from rows and rearrange it in columns. Now, this is very important and this is mainly used when you have a smaller set of data or data that you want to rotate and see how the column and the rows are looking with that set of data. Because the moment you change it from the columns to rows, you will know that all your parameters that you have put it in the columns are going to be shifting to the rows, right? And all the other things will shift. Whatever was the data that was there, that was input in the cells itself in the rows, will shift as a column. That means the visualization of the data completely changes, right? So let's understand what transpose paste means. If the user wants to rotate the data in column and rearrange it in rows, they can use the transpose feature. It also helps in rotating the data from rows and rearranging in columns. So this works vice versa. Let's say you want to shift the rows data to columns, you have to use transpose paste. If you want to shift the column data into rows, you have to use transpose paste, right? So you can do it depending on what your requirement is. Now, there's something that you also need to understand is when you're shifting the data, how does a data look ideally? In your columns, you will have headings or the parameters of or the topics. For example, if you're taking a student survey, your column headings will be uh, name, age, address, uh, student class, section, which school, or let's say in the same school, which stream. Yeah, so you have all these data. Now you want them to be shifted to the column. That means all the data that is there in the rows will shift to the columns and the column data will shift as rows, right? Similarly, let's say if you want rows data to be shifted, for example, you want to see the number of classes happening in each subject, which is there already in the uh, rows because you have created a timetable of the class schedule. Then you can use transpose paste to make it into column data and all the columns will shift to rows. Okay. If the data includes formula, Microsoft Excel will automatically update them to match the new placement. User can switch between absolute and relative references before rotating the data. Now, if you have any formulas which has been, added in the data itself, it will automatically update them to match the new placement. Now, this is very important when you're working with large sets of data and you want that rotation thing to be happening. You don't want the formulas to get affected because you've computed and received certain results, right? So, for that, you have to make sure that you are computing the data properly using the proper formulas for it. And then, when you are changing it, making sure that the formulas have also updated, right? Because from if you have computed it in rows, it will be computed in columns now since you have used transpose paste as a feature. The table needs to be converted to a range by using convert to range button in the table tab. If you have a table, so you remember how we created a table, right? By adding borders and a set of data borders and cell styles and formatting has been done. If you want that needs to be done, then you have to convert it depending on the, you know, depending on the range, and after converting it only, you will be able to use the transpose paste button. The next is to frequently rotate the data. It is better to create a pivot table. Pivot table is something that you will be learning in the next sessions, but if you are looking to frequently rotate the data, and if you want to rotate the data uh, using this, then it is always better that you use transpose paste, and also make sure that your data is in a pivot table format, right? So let's understand how to use transpose paste. So let's go back, and we will go back to this thing. So you remember we were working. Now, for example, I want to use transpose paste. Now, let me use this. Let me select this column. You do right click and you will see there are paste options. The first is paste special, values, formulas, and then there's the transpose paste. The moment you see transpose paste is with arrow. There's a downward arrow and then there is a rightward looking arrow. So click onto this and you see all of this has already changed. So this part, which where all the columns have come, the column headings have come into the rows, right? And all your rows have turned into a column based data. You see how it looks right now? Now, here what you have done is you have made sure that all the data are looking, all the data that we were looking for have already been pasted as rows, as columns. For example, this whole thing was in a column format. Again, we will go, for example, let's say this is the one that we want to use transpose paste in. So select this, do right click, click onto the transpose paste. And when it says there's already data here, do you want to replace it? Make sure that you are reading this. Any warning messages that come where they might tell you that you might lose your data and all, make sure that you're reading it. And then you click on yes here. And you see this has already changed. So all your columns heading have shifted to the rows. Different rows have different headings now. And all the data that was there in the columns have all the data that was there in the rows have shifted to the columns. So whenever you are using transpose paste, make sure that you're using transpose paste because you are rotating the data, right? Uh, for example, let's say I want to rotate this part of the data. If I go to transpose paste, see, again my data has changed. Similarly, you have to always be very careful when you're rotating your data because you would want to see how your data gets represented. Transpose paste is a very, very important feature in case you want to rotate the data and show them, the columns as rows and the rows data as columns, right? So making sure that you're applying this transpose paste, you will be able to be, you know, portray your data as the way you want it to be. Obviously, you visualize when you're presenting your data in a certain manner. You visualize how you want to present that data. Similarly, to present this data, what you need to do is making sure that you are looking into how this data will look if you are converting the rows to columns and columns to rows, right? Now, two things before we we talk more about the other paste copy paste features is that one, making sure that if you have a table, convert it to a cell range, right? That is very, very important. Don't use transpose paste in a table. Always convert your table to a cell range so that you are able to use the transpose paste option, right? The second is, if you have a pivot table, if you have a pivot table, which we will be learning in the later session, you will be able to use transpose paste much more easily. Why? Because transpose paste will sort of help you in understanding how the whole formation looks like. So, and you can rotate the data in number of times without affecting the data. Yes, so that's there. The next thing is for the formulas, making sure that your formulas are properly updated once you're using transpose paste. So the one way that I would always say, if you're very cautious with the set of data and you haven't started computing it yet, if you want to shift it from rows to columns and columns to rows, always do the computation after you have used transpose paste here. In case you use transpose paste after you have computed, then make sure that you have actually updated all the formulas. The formulas have got updated and it looks exactly the way you want to visualize the data to be. But you have not missed out on any of your information and there hasn't been any information lost. Yes, so this is how transpose paste looks like. Now that you have understood about transpose paste, make sure that you visit support.microsoft.com to know more about transpose paste. Practice transpose paste before you apply transpose paste in any of your data documents, right? Take a small piece of data and start practicing about transpose paste before you're applying it to your main data sheets to see how it looks like, how the whole visualization changes. To learn more about Microsoft Excel, do visit microsoftlearn.com and finish a course on Microsoft Excel to earn few extra credits. Thank you.